Okay, so in an attempt to add some variety to the in-class instruction, I've made this video, and it's not just a video, so you're not going to have to sit there and watch the entire video in class. It's actually going to be interactive, so there'll be questions that pop up throughout the video, and you need to make sure that you answer these to the best that you can. Make sure that they're correct, and ask me questions, ask your teammates questions, because these questions will be submitted to me for a grade. So you don't have to write anything down. Just as soon as you answer the question, it will send it to my computer or my Educanon account, and I'll look at them later and grade them. So today we're going to be continuing on with building functions. So we spent 2 days last week just building functions from, or in context from word problems. But today we're not actually going to be looking at word problems. We're just going to be working with some, looking at some notations, looking at what happens when we add, subtract, multiply, divide different functions, and how to get new functions by combining those functions. So here's our standard. We want to cover this standard, BF.1c, combine standard function types using arithmetic operations. Now, don't just kind of ignore this example. We'll get there, but that's not what we're going to focus on today. We don't want to look at anything in context today. We just want to focus on how to add, how to subtract, how to multiply, how to divide 2, 3, 4 different functions, and the notation that is used to indicate those specific operations. So here, let's just start off with the basics. So we've got two functions, f of x and g of x at the top. So if I ask you what is f of 5, what do you think it is? So hopefully at this point you know that whenever I have this notation, f of 5, that is telling me to plug in 5 into this x. So this is f of x, this is saying 5, or f of 5, and this is telling me to plug in 5 into every single x value in my expression. So here's my expression, and here is my only x. Now, in coordinate algebra, you should have covered, or you should know what these little bars are on each side of the expression. If you don't, I will remind you, these are called the absolute value bars. And what they tell you is, basically just do the exact same operation, and then just make your final answer positive. The absolute value. That is how far away from 0 you are. So if you end up with a negative inside here, when you take the absolute value, it's just going to be positive. That's all it's telling you. So let's look at a few examples. What is f of 5? Hopefully you got this one correct, but let's just go over it just in case. So f of 5 is telling me to plug in 5 into every x. So I have my absolute value bar, 5 squared minus 4, and then absolute value bar. Okay, absolute value bar 5 squared. I look at the 5 squared. 5 squared is, of course, 25. And then minus 4, absolute value bar. And 25 minus 4 is 21. And this is already positive. So I've got 21. The absolute value of 21, that's just going to be positive 21. So anytime you see these absolute value bars, it's always going to be positive. If this were negative 21, our final answer would be 21. It's positive 21, our answer is still going to be positive 21. So that's the answer to A. Now let's look at another function. What is g of 36? So I find my function g, here it is. I've got 36, and I want to plug 36 into every x. What do you get when you perform that operation? So hopefully at that point, or at this point, you know that it's going to be g of 36. I'll plug in 36 into my x, so I've got the square root of 36, which you know is going to give me 6. It's going to be 6 here. Really, I guess it should be positive negative 6. Positive negative 6. And now the last one, go ahead and give it a shot and tell me what you get. Now, on this one, I'll identify, which is going to drive me crazy. I should have had a question mark right there. So what is f of 1? I find my f function, and all I do is I plug in 1 for all of my x's. Absolute value bar, 1 squared minus 4. Of course, 1 squared is just 1 minus 4, and that's going to give me absolute value bar of -3. Now, again, this absolute value is telling you just how far away from 0 are you. So this is always going to be, anything in between these absolute value bars is always going to be positive. So we're 3 places away from 0, so that's just going to give me 3. And I'll box that. I'll go back up and box this as my final answer. And that's the first page. So go ahead and try one on your own. I'm going to give you a new function and a new number to evaluate. So answer this question now. So hopefully you got that one correct. If you didn't, be sure to ask me before you go on to the next section. But from last week, I think all of you feel pretty comfortable with these operations. But let's look at something that you may not have seen. So I've just got a quick overview of what each operation, what you do with each operation, and how we typically denote it in mathematics. So if we have two functions, say f and g here, we usually denote when we're adding two functions like this in this form. So you have parentheses f plus g of x is equal to f of x plus g of x. The difference, same thing. So it's parentheses f minus g of x is equal to f of x, the function f of x minus g of x. Sometimes you'll see it denoted like this. Fg, which just stands for f times g of x, is the same as just multiplying the two functions together. So if I give you a function f of x and a function g of x, this is just telling you to multiply the two. And then, of course, the quotient, or dividing the two, f divided by g of x, is just telling you to divide the function f of x by g of x. And, of course, we know that since g of x is in the denominator, it cannot equal 0. So this puts a restriction on g of x, that g of x cannot equal 0. So you can refer back to this as we work through the next few problems by rewinding the video. These notes are also posted in iTunes U if you need to refer to them, or if you want to pull them up in a separate app, and then you can just double tap the home button and go to your in-class notes, and then double tap the home button and go back to the video, if that helps. But the best way to learn these notations and learn how to work with them is just by doing it. So here we have two different functions, f of x and g of x. So the first question is, what is parentheses f plus g x? Now this is the function, this is the entire function. What is this equal to, and what is this telling you to do? So let's go ahead and work with this a little bit. What this is telling me to do, f plus g of x, is telling me to add f of x and g of x. So let's do this, f plus g of x is equal to f of x plus g of x, which is equal to f of x here, so x squared minus 6, I can plug that in there. I get x squared minus 6. The next one, g of x, I just take my square root of x plus 6 and plug it in here, plus square root of x plus 6. And now I combine like terms, and of course I've got -6 and +6, so those are going to just cancel out, and I'm left with x squared plus the square root of x. Now if you wanted to, you could rewrite this as a new function if you wanted to. It's not necessary, because this is just telling you what to do, but you could call this a new function. We'll call it maybe we'll just do h of x. So h of x is equal to the sum of f and g. That step is not absolutely necessary, but it just makes it look a little cleaner in the end. Okay, so now you try. Answer number 2, what is f minus g of x? So hopefully you were able to construct this. So f minus g of x is telling you to do f of x minus g of x. We know that because on our overview, this is saying f minus g is telling us to subtract the function f from the function g, or actually subtract the function g from the function f. So let's look at this. So what we get, we just plug in our function f of x in for f of x, and we get x squared minus 6 minus g, and g is the square root of x plus 6. Now I'm just going to distribute this negative to both terms. So I get x squared minus 6 minus the square root of x minus 6, and my final answer is x squared minus the square root of x. And I combine like terms. I can combine the negative 6's, and I get negative 12. And that's my final answer. So we have constructed a brand new function by subtracting these two. That's what we mean when we talk about in the standard, where it says combine standard function types using arithmetic operations. So we've added, we've subtracted, and now what I would like you to do, just answer this following question. So we've got a brand new function, and I want you to use the new function to at least evaluate one number. So give it a shot. So I hope you were able to answer that question. If not, feel free to ask me how I performed that operation in class, or how I got that answer before you go on to the next slide. So just go ahead and pause the video now and raise your hand and ask if that part was confusing. But from what I saw last week, I'm sure most of you probably got that no problem. So let's look at multiplying and dividing. So it's kind of the same thing. So what is f times g, or fg of x? So of course this is telling you to multiply f and g, the functions f and g together. And if we perform that operation, we're going to get fg of x is the same as f of x times g of x, which is equal to, I just plug in my function f of x in for f of x, and my function g in for g, and we get x cubed times x plus 6, which is equal to, I can I can leave it in this form, but for me, I just want to go ahead and distribute this x to both terms, and I'll get x to the 4th, because I know that x cubed times x, add the exponents, 3 plus 1, that's 4, plus x cubed, distribute that to the next term, and I get 6x cubed. And that's my final function. So that is the function that we get after we multiply f of x and g of x together. So now you try. What do you think this function is telling you? And if you know what it's telling you, go ahead and give it a shot and try to write this out on your own before I walk through it. Okay, so this function is telling you to divide g by f, so to divide or evaluate the quotient of the function f and g, and as a function of x. So what this is telling you to do is f g of x. So I just take my two functions and I divide them. So I get f of x over g